they said I wasn't in labor, so I went home and I thought I wasn't in labor. And I continued to have those non-labor pains until my water broke and got a mirror down there and I could see his head. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to make it to the hospital.
Welcome to Wisdom Beyond the Womb. I'm Trisha Harris with Trisha Harris Photography, and today we are with Lydia Baker. Hello, Lydia. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
Great. I'm glad you're here, and I'm really excited to share this time with you to learn more about the services you offer. So tell us, what are you, what do you do, and how do you help moms?
I have been in OB education in Brevard County since 2004. I teach for doctor's offices, I teach for the hospital, I taught for the state for 10 years, and I taught in the teen parent program in the local high schools in Brevard County for over 10 years as well. And I taught all about birth, babies, and how to take care of them. So I do offer childbirth education classes in Brevard. I offer birth and postpartum doula services, and I do a lot of consultations with new families.
Wonderful. Sounds like education is something you're really passionate about.
Yes.
So tell me, what does the education look like? Is this a one-time visit? Do you offer a series of classes? How do we get educated by you?
Well, the vast majority of, let me say this. Pregnant women are beacons that people come to offer all kinds of unsolicited advice and stories, and most of them are on the negative side. And many times they're coming from people who were not prepared. They were not prepared for birth. They were not prepared for their babies. So by taking a class, it kind of helps eliminate a lot of those things. So I offer live courses, I offer live in-person classes, and I also offer live Zoom courses. And the reason why I like live classes is because the interactive portion of it. So people can ask questions, they can address their concerns. Hey, this happened to my friend, is this something that could possibly happen to me? And I can address those concerns right away. I also like live classes here locally because I know their care providers, the doctors and midwives very, very well in Brevard County. I know the way that they practice, so I can help teach to that. Because a lot of times people will say, hey, will my doctor do this? Will my doctor do that? So I can, help steer them in the right direction there. But I teach for the hospitals. I teach independently on my own. I do offer private in-home classes. And then I also teach for doctor's offices like Hibiscus Women's Center.
You mentioned you're a doula.
Yes.
Tell us, what is a doula?
A doula provides physical, emotional, and educational support throughout pregnancy, throughout the labor and delivery process, and the immediate postpartum. And a lot of times people will say, can I have a doula if I'm planning on having a C-section? Can I have a doula if I'm planning on having a medicated delivery, if I want to have an epidural right away? I kind of explain it in that doulas are tour guides. So if you were to go to a country where you didn't understand the language, you didn't understand the culture, and you did a lot of research into going there beforehand, it would be a completely different experience than if you were to hire a tour guide, somebody who knows the language, understands the culture, knows where to go, how to communicate with people. It's going to be a completely different experience. And that's what it's like with hiring a doula when you're giving birth. And many times your support person is amazing and wants to help you, but they don't know how to help you. So I help them help you, depending upon their comfort level and your comfort level with them. I help them find a space because many times they have no idea what to say, no idea what to do. So I help them become more involved in the birthing process to their comfort level.
So how do you prep them during the before labor part, besides with just education? How are you prepping the support person and the mom for this?
So it does come back to the education, knowing the process and how the labor and birth process works and the different interventions that could possibly be going on as well and how to navigate that. A lot of times guys, if the support person is a male, they kind of get nervous when it's real quiet and there's nothing else going on. They try to figure out what can they do, what can they fix, and many times there's not anything that needs to be fixed. The labor process is not broken, and there's nothing that they can do to fix it. And sometimes just letting them know that just being present and being there is often enough, and that's often enough in your relationship with a woman in general is she might be talking to you about what's going on, and she doesn't necessarily want you to fix it. She just wants you to be there, and she wants to be heard and her concerns to be validated. And that's really important with the labor process, because that's oftentimes what the support person is going to be doing is, maybe put their hand on the shoulder, maybe squeeze a hip there, push there. And I kind of do help them know when and where to do that so that they look really good for the mom.
So a lot of times our only knowledge of childbirth classes are what we've seen from Hollywood with the breathing and all that.
Yeah.
Is that true? Is that similar to what you offer?
Well, I mean, when you think about it, in life, one of the biggest abilities that we have is to be able to control our mind many times with a breathing technique by slowing your breathing down, slowing down your mind from racing. And so there is some breathing to it, okay? Because when you're under stress and you get real tense, if you were to pause and pay attention to your breathing, you're going to notice that it's short and it's changed. So if you can make yourself in stressful situations slow your breathing down, in turn, your body will start to calm down. So there is a good portion of breathing in the classes, but people do get Lamaze class and childbirth class. They're like, is this going to be a Lamaze class? And Lamaze is a brand like Nike and Reebok.
Okay.
So it is a Lamaze class, but it is very much childbirth education. I go over thoroughly how the birth process works, what happens, what are the symptoms, what your support person can do during that time. I go over all the different interventions. I go over all the different medications they use for inductions, how that affects your body, what that looks like. We go over what your pain medication options are. We go over what it looks like if you need to have a C-section, what your options are there. Sometimes people think if I have to have a C-section, I got no options, and that's not true. You do have a lot of options to help make your C-section a more family-centered, positive environment for you. And that all goes back to being more prepared. The more prepared you are, the better you're going to be able to handle the challenges that are waiting you there. And if you do if you do end up needing to have a C-section, knowing what your options are and how to make it where you feel more comfortable is really going to go a long way in your recovery, physically and mentally from birth.
At what stage in the pregnancy should we start talking with you and getting you on our team?
So for childbirth education, I usually encourage people to take it somewhere ideally between 25 and 35 weeks of pregnancy so that you have time to ruminate on the information. A lot of times people will say, I did some research and I did some reading, and then I took your class and found out that none of that stuff is really relevant to me or my hospital or how my doctor practices. So I thought I knew a lot of stuff until after your class. So I like for them to have time to ruminate on the information and do their own research in moving in the right direction. So I kind of help put them in the right direction and where to look and how to research for birth. So for childbirth classes, I do suggest between 25 and 35 weeks of pregnancy so they have time to ruminate on the information. For birth doula services, I fill up really quickly. So as soon as you think that you might want to have a doula, I would encourage you to schedule a consultation with me because I do fill up really fast.
And how does that process work? Since babies come when babies want to come, how do you plan and schedule your patients to ensure you'll be there the day of their birth?
So, and that's why I fill up fast. Within their safe dates is between 37 and 41 weeks of pregnancy. So I only accept a certain amount of clients that are within that window. Now, of course, there are some people who deliver early. There are some people who deliver a little bit later. So again, that all comes back to hiring me fairly early in the process or as early as you can. Sometimes you don't think of a doula until a little bit later on. And, I may have availability. But you do contact me. We set up a consultation, usually via Zoom, and lasts about 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, answering your questions and concerns. And then based upon, comfort level and how you feel, we would move forward.
Do they contact you as they're heading to the hospital? Once they're at the hospital, what part of the labor process do you enter into the picture? Yeah.
Because people will hire me really early on in their pregnancy to ensure that I'm going to be there
On
for
the
the
calendar.
delivery. Right. And then I'm there to be able to answer questions or concerns they have about their pregnancy. You know, should I be doing this? What are your suggestions for this? What are, you know, activities and exercises that I can be doing to help prepare? And then I usually do an in-person meeting to go over, you know, what their birth preferences are. I like to try to help them with their birth preferences so that they have, you know, a birth that they feel comfortable with. But as far as to when I join them in labor is very specific to the client. Some people feel comfortable with me coming when labor is well established or having, you know, some pretty good contractions. And sometimes people, they're not sure, are these contractions? Can you know, come over, see what's going on? So sometimes I'm with them from very early on in their labor, and sometimes I get there when they're in the hospital and their doctor or midwife has decided to admit them as a patient. That is very specific to them, and that's something that we would talk about once somebody hires me and when labor is going. Because sometimes, like I said, people will say, am I in labor? You know, these are the symptoms I'm having. And so I kind of help them determine if they really are in labor or if this is just their body getting ready for labor, which sometimes does happen.
So what are some of the misconceptions around doulas versus midwives?
The huge thing is that people get us confused. They think that we're like the same thing. We're interchangeable. And I do get that all the time. People will say, hey, can you come deliver my baby at my house? No, absolutely not. I cannot do that. So doulas they provide educational, informational, and physical support in that we're there with you physically. We help get you into different positions. You know, if you're feeling symptoms in certain, you know, if you're feeling pain in one way, we're able to kind of help get you into a different position to make the contraction feel a little bit better, kind of help, you know, the baby navigate the pelvis with getting you into different positions. So that's the physical part of it. The midwife, she is over you and your baby's health, making sure that you and your baby are safe. And they're going to be the ones who deliver your babies. I do not deliver your baby. I am just going to be there to provide that educational, informational, which are interchangeable, emotional and physical support.
Wonderful. Tell me what draws your passion, what made you get into this, and what just keeps you going with helping moms and making them prepared.
Well, it really came from the birth of my second son. I have 4 sons, and my whole labor process was different with him. But when I went into labor, I realized how little I knew about the whole process. And I thought that I was in labor. I went to the hospital. They told me I wasn't in labor. Now, things have changed drastically in Brevard County. I mean, he's 22 years old. So it's a long time ago. But it was just the fact of how little I knew and how little I trusted my body. You know, they said I wasn't in labor, so I went home and I thought I wasn't in labor. And I continued to have those non-labor pains until my water broke and got a mirror down there and I could see his head. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to make it to the hospital. I did make it to the hospital with 15 minutes to spare, but it was the lack of education, I think, that was big. And I was like, why? What can we do different? And then he was just a very hard baby. I love him to death, love him now, of course, but I didn't know what to do with him. I mean, he cried and cried and cried, and I'm like, what do you want, baby? And again, I was like, I can't be the only one who's feeling this way. So I was like, this is going to be the end. I'm gonna do my very best to educate women on their birthing options, how to know when they're in labor, you know, what their choices are, and also how to help with postpartum, because, you know, you would think with your second baby you know everything, but no, you don't. So now I know a lot more. I've been learning about birth and babies for over 20 years, and I'm still learning, and I like to pour that into new families.
I love your excitement around it, and I think it's really great, and it resonates all over your face when you talk about it. So that's wonderful. How do people find you? How do they get in contact with you? How do they connect with you?
The best way to reach me is lydiabaker.com. Awesome. All of my services are available there. How to contact me as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you today, Lydia.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.